Thank you so much for joining us in Conversatorio Cubano to talk about your fabulous memoir.
Thank you. I'm honored to talk to you and to be here.
It is really a terrific book. I'm going to dive right in because I think everybody would really enjoy hearing you talk more than I about what it means to you and what it means to the community of readers that you've invited to look into our history and your own personal story. So early in the memoir, you remind readers that the title comes from a poem by the nationalist intellectual Jose Marti that all Cubans should know.
Yeah.
The it really is wonderful. It's on page 94 to 95. I'm going to just read that little section. In versos sencillos, you say, Marti's most famous work, there is a verse. Denle al vano el oro tierno que arde y brilla en el crisol. A mí, denme el bosque eterno, cuando rompe en él el sol. 6 words of that are etched onto my grandfather's gravestone, you write, right beside an etching of the Cuban flag. A mí denme el bosque eterno. It means give me the eternal forest. So I read this and I thought over the course of the book, it definitely acquires a series of meanings that are not necessarily intended by Martí or the ones that your grandfather might have had or his family might have had when the decision was made to put that on his tombstone. And so I wonder, it strikes me as a kind of shorthand for the many things that you have inherited from Cuba and from your ancestors. And so I wonder if you could just react to that idea. Is the eternal forest your inheritance?
It's such a good question. I think that the words "the eternal forest" came to mean different things to me over the course of writing this book. Um, Initially, I was drawn to that poem and drawn. I was drawn to Martí for many reasons, but one of the reasons I was drawn to Martí is because I think that Cubans of every color and persuasion and affiliation claim him as their own. And I find that to be really fascinating that his words seem to cross boundaries in this way and that everybody claims him. He's speaking for me, whoever me is. And then I actually, before I started writing this book, I didn't know that it was on my grandfather's gravestone. He died when I was a little girl, and then I went to the cemetery to visit his grave with my mother, and I saw them there, and I was just like, it honestly knocked me back. Like, first of all, it's a gorgeous phrase, and having it etched on your tombstone for eternity just like gave me goosebumps. Just because for in the setting of a cemetery, to me, the eternal forest became eternity and the afterlife and whatever comes next. Um, but it was also this blend of the personal of my grandfather and the political of Martí that I just like it just felt so alchemized to me. Um, but then in writing this book, yeah, it did start to take on this meaning of inheritance to me, and just thinking a lot about family trees and the forest of your family trees, and then are these trees individual people, or are they bloodlines? And you sort of grow up in the shade of this forest of the people who came before you. Um, yeah, so it kind of it ultimately took on so many different meanings. It was the political, the personal, and then the familial in this really wild way. Yeah.
Yes, and I think one of the things that you share with Martí, if we could share something with such a great Messiah for all of us, one of the things you share is the book is very invitational, and that title is very invitational. You know, Martí was all about embracing everyone,
Yeah.
speaking to everyone, and inclusion. And so there's something really quite beautiful about this idea. And so I want to ask as well about another aspect that you bring in, which is that many of your family members were immigrants from the Canary Islands, and that is certainly a hidden history in Cuba's past. More than, it was tens of thousands came over the course of about 40 years from the 1850s through the early 1900s. Out of a total population of Spaniards who came by the 1920s, it was like a million. I mean, the
Yeah.
population doubled in Cuba. But what we forget is really what it meant to be from the Canary Islands, because it's a place that's very poor. It's a place where the Spanish first developed slavery and sugar. Christopher Columbus, his first job was as a slave manager in the Canary
Mhm.
Islands. And so there's all of this kind of incredible meaning to your decision to talk about three of your female ancestors who came from there, and that they, as legend have it, would get together and effectively on the same night, wearing these white dresses, fly back and visit with family and loved ones and return by morning. And so it's sort of this fabulous story of Cuban witches, Canary Island witches. Um, and so I want to read from a page there. When you complete the story, you write a quote, and this is page 49. The power of a myth is in the creation of an identity. We are the tales they tell the next generation. We are the relics waiting to be uncovered by our grandchildren in boxes under the bed, or by a future archaeologist wondering how a civilization fell and finding just enough charred clues to know there was a fire, unquote. I really wish I had written that. I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
It's like fabulous. And for a historian, I mean, oh my God, it's so great.
Thank you.
So
That's
it's
so
really
nice.
great. So it's really moving. And then I think it speaks especially to those of us who are the children of refugees and the children of immigrants from any part of the world.
Yeah.
Mainly, certainly, you're speaking about Cubanness and being Cuban, but it speaks to all of us. And so, in some ways, too, it's like a perfect summary of the journey that you take in the book. And when we get close to the end, you talk about feeling incomplete for a lot of your life, and that there is an incompleteness to yourself. And yet, by the time you finish the last page, you, the reader, um, the equation seems completed. It seems as if you have healed and you are far more whole as a result of this journey. So I wonder if writing the book helped you to become more whole. I mean, quite separate from the narrative that you're writing, just in your own personal life, if it made you feel more whole to write this story.
It really did. I think that this is something that a lot of children of refugees probably will relate to a lot. Just for anyone watching, my mother came from Cuba, so I never had the Cuban life or the Cuban experience. So I did grow up feeling like there was this like huge part of my family that I just didn't understand and didn't have access to and couldn't quite claim. And that was exacerbated by the fact that my dad is white American. My last name is Sheppard. I just felt very like other from this, my family and from their experience in Cuba. Like, it's everything to my family. They talk about it all the time and the memories and the stories and the people. Um, so I felt this separation from that, and then also from a big thread in the story is my aunt who committed suicide before I was born, and that those two sort of hovering clouds of secret, or what to me felt like secret, this person who I didn't know because she died before I was born, and this home that I didn't know because it was their home before I was born,
Mhm.
um, did make me feel incomplete and different from everyone else in my family. And yeah, writing this book and kind of accessing these places and these my family members' memories and any archival material I could find that did make me feel more Cuban and more myself and more complete, certainly.
Yes, and it is also quite a revelation when you return to Cuba at the end of the book. You tell us about going back, You tell us about going back when you were 16, so it was
Mhm.
2003. And that section is called The Ones Who Stayed, which is a wonderful title, and it expresses precisely how your family, fragmented as it is, um, was nonetheless connected by this kind of memory and ancestral um, attachment. So I wonder if you could explain what it was like for you to return and see these places. I mean, I realize because, as you say, you admit in the book you were 16, so you didn't have the same perspective that you would have today. But what was it like to return to see the places that had become so mythical and so fantastical, but also very concrete in your mind and essential to your identity? And then I wonder how you think returning changed you and whether you would have been able to write this memoir without having made that trip or any successive trips back.
Yeah, I mean that was a really seismic moment for me. Um, I think that it felt sort of like walking into a story or walking into a photograph. It was like arriving there, I felt like a real sense of familiarity and like homecoming is a strange word to use, but I did feel a sense of homecoming. Just like the places I had heard about my whole life were real. They weren't just a story that everyone was telling. They were real houses and real streets, and it just was so it really changed my perspective of who I was and kind of where I fit into the narrative of my family being there and realizing that I did feel this deep connection to the place. Um, I certainly couldn't have written this book without that trip. I think that it really unlocked something in my brain that made me want to keep learning as much as I could about Cuba and as much as I could about our story. Um, and yeah, I don't know if I would have come to that without that early experience. And something about being 16 and so impressionable. I think
Mhm.
it really was like a tender moment in my life to go and be like, wow, I actually belong to this culture that I wasn't sure if I belonged to before.
Yeah, and it becomes part of you, that you and it's a sort of an indelible part of you to go to Cuba and return with this.
Mhm.
I would argue that's sort of a piece of yourself that you didn't really expect. It's
Yeah,
never quite what you expected. You would bring back, and
totally.
so yeah,
Yeah, it was unbelievably meaningful. I mean, it was interesting too because again, my dad, who's American and had also kind of like me just heard about Cuba. It was this story. I think it was really a really important trip for him too to realize, I don't know, that his wife was actually from this place and this place was real.
yeah.
Like it was really meaningful for all of us.
Yeah. I really want to thank you for this wonderful book and for sharing it with us in this unique way through Conversatorio Cubano. And I really wish you the best, and I can't wait to read the next one.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you.